What's up, y'all? Welcome to the Rewatch channel. We plan to make a lot of sports-related content on here, and this is actually our first ever video, so show some love by hitting that like button and subscribing. Let's get into it.
First, we'll be talking about the NBA, and then I'll hand it over to my co-host to cover recent NFL news. First, we have All-Star Snubs. The biggest ones, in my opinion, are Devin Booker, Domantas Sabonis, and Trae Young. Trae Young was an All-Star starter last year. To not even make the team is a pretty big drop-off. You have to remember, the coaches select the All-Star reserves, and not many coaches respect or like Trae Young based on his playstyle. I understand he is not an old school player and does take millions of shots. Also, a big part of his game is drawing fouls to get to the free throw line. And with a lot of coaches in the league right now preferring the old NBA play style and the rough and tough kind of era, they don't really like how he plays. And it's not surprising that he won't be making an All-Star appearance this year. On the other hand, I would take Domantas Sabonis over Vucevic. I understand Vucevic is carrying that injury-ridden team, but Domantas is also carrying his team to the playoffs. I know he has Miles Turner, top shot blocker in the league, and Malcolm Brogdon, but he is still a big part if he's like majority of that team. He is shooting a better percentage than Vucevic and only averaging 3 points less. I think this decision could go either way, but the coaches should have chosen Sabonis. And then now we have the biggest of them all, Devin Booker. Arguably the best player on the Suns, averaging 25, 4, and 4 on 50% shooting from the field and 38 behind the arc. He should have made it over Chris Paul. I know you can make a case both ways because Chris Paul is a playmaker, but if it were up to me, I would have chosen Devin Booker. Also, KD's injury will keep him out of the All-Star break, so we'll have to see who his injury replacement is. Originally, I thought James Harden would move up and then DeMontis would get a chance. But what happened was, I don't think they classify James Harden as a shooting guard small forward now, more of a point guard shooting guard. So they moved Jason Tatum up instead, and DeMontis got to play. Moving on from All-Star snubs, we have to talk about AD. One of the best players in the league is injured. He just made his eighth straight NBA All-Star appearance, but will not be playing due to an injury. This has taken a massive toll on the Lakers. They are 2-4 without him, but because of the last two games, they beat the Portland Trailblazers and the Golden State Warriors. They were 0-4 in the previous four games. So this situation is something that could be worth watching. We know that players in recent years have come back strong after tearing an Achilles, but in the late 1900s and early 2000s, an Achilles injury basically meant that your career was either over or wasn't going to go great. So we better pay attention to what's going on with AD. Our last topic today is the Nets' 8-game win streak. I know they lost to the Mavericks, okay? Earlier this season, they made a trade for James Harden, in which they sent Jared Allen, who's a stud and helping my co-host fantasy team out, and Torian Prince to Cleveland, Karis LeVert, and a forward literally no one cares about, to the Pacers, and sent 3 first-rounders and 4 pick swaps to Houston. Oladipo got moved to Houston for Karis LeVert and a second-rounder. This trade paired up arguably 3 top 10 players in the league on the same team. This sent fans ballistic. People and NBA players were taking to Twitter voicing their opinions. I personally got so frustrated with Harden. This situation even got RDC World, who's been making LeBron reaction videos for 4+ years to get recognition from LeBron. Now, back to the current day. We've seen the Nets lose to some of the worst teams in the league. For example, the Cavs, Wizards, Pistons, but now it looks like they found their footing. They're on an 8-game win streak without their best player, depending on who you ask. But now I think James Harden has honestly grown into the best player and is taking KD's spot. James Harden is a walking triple double. And Kyrie Irving is giving you some of that razzle dazzle, and he's just such a consistent scorer on the court. If their defense doesn't struggle, this team looks like the sure NBA Finals champions. If this team is able to outscore everyone, then their playoff run will be a cakewalk. I do understand they have defensive struggles, and that might cost them when it comes to big games. But who cares, man? I mean, offense is what the league has been catered to for a decent amount of time now. Now, that's all I got. Let's go to my co host for some NFL action.
Alright, sliding right into NFL news for this week, let's talk about the Russell Wilson trade rumors that have been going around for pretty much the last week or so. If you're unfamiliar with these rumors, let me just update you real fast. So basically what happened was earlier this week, Russ's agent reported to the media that Wilson was considering his options just a little bit, and his primary destinations as of right now are the Bears, Cowboys, Saints, or the Raiders. If you're a fan of any of these teams, keep your fingers crossed. And most of these teams do have uncertainty with their QB position moving forwards into the 2021 season. But let's talk about what this means for Seattle. With Russell Wilson being just a huge factor in this team's success over pretty much the last decade, is it really the right move for your organization to not provide him with the assets he desperately needs, namely a solid O-line? Is that really the way you want to move forward with your organization? Because look, we saw what this man was able to do with a great, healthy receiving core this year. I mean, he started off red hot this season. He was just dominant for the first half of the season. He was putting up crazy stats game after game. He led his team to a 5-0 starting record, and he was also leading the MVP race at the beginning of the year. But then, as the season slowly went on, his dominance slowly started to fade until by the end of the season, he just wasn't recognizable, and he wasn't the same man that he was at the start of the season. And I don't want to blame all of that on his O-line because that's just not fair. Uh, but when you look at the numbers and when you look at how many times he's been sacked, it's hard not to think that his offensive line hasn't played a factor in how many times he's been sacked. Let's take a look at the numbers. So in 9 seasons, he's been sacked a total of 394 times, which is an average of 43.8 sacks per season. And granted, he does admit that a lot of this is because he hangs in the pocket too long, looking for a deep shot down the field. But come on, he's on track to be the most sacked QB in NFL history, and that's just something to think about for the organization. So, do you really want to risk losing him by not providing him with the assets he needs? He already has a great receiving core, as previously mentioned. He already has a pretty solid defense when they're healthy. Just give him an O-line. Just give the man an O-line, and we'll be seeing the Chiefs in Super Bowl 56 next year. I say we because I am a Seattle Seahawks fan. Obviously, you guys didn't know that, but now you do, so that's cool. All right, moving very swiftly on to another very anticipated QB trade, and a trade rumor that I don't think comes as a surprise to anyone that even watches football a little bit. Of course, I'm talking about Deshaun Watson. This trade rumor has had a resurgence over the last few weeks. So basically, here's what went down. After a very surprising statement Watson made, quote, "Loyalty is everything," there raised speculation from fans about whether or not he was actually leaving Houston. A few hours later, he did reiterate to his coach that he didn't plan to play for the Texans heading into the future. And we're not going to spend too much time talking about these trade rumors because obviously nothing is set in stone yet. Everything could change in a matter of a minute, and there are more exciting topics to cover regarding the NFL. All we know for sure at this point in time is that Deshaun Watson will advance his career without the Houston Texans. On the topic of Houston, let's talk about J.J. Watt, who has just signed a contract with the Arizona Cardinals in free agency. Before we talk about this trade, let me just say that I really feel for y'all Houston Texans fans out there, because y'all's organization is just falling apart in front of our eyes. First D-Hop, then Deshaun, now JJ. Alright, forget Houston, let's talk about how this affects Arizona. Their defensive line now has both Chandler Jones and JJ Watt. Let's put that into perspective. Since 2012, these two have racked up just absurd stat lines. Chandler Jones since 2012 has had 97 sacks, and J.J. Watt not too far behind with 95.5. This places them at number 1 and 2 in the NFL for sacks, respectively. Again, they're on the same team now. I don't care how good your offensive line is, this is just a two-man wrecking crew. However, I think there is some surprise with him signing with the Cardinals, just because I think a lot of people either expected him to go play with his brothers in Pittsburgh or sign with a heavy title-contending team. But now we can't sleep on things down there in Arizona. They've got a young, super talented Kyler Murray coming off a great year, a dual-threat receiving core with the likes of Christian Kirk and DeAndre Hopkins. I don't mention Larry Fitzgerald there because there is some uncertainty whether or not he is returning to the NFL or not for the 2021-2022 season. Back to their lineup. A solid running back in Kenyon Drake, not to mention their defensive line, who, like I mentioned before, is going to wreak havoc this season. In the capital off, an extremely talented secondary consisting of their main man, Budda Baker, Patrick Peterson, who they might lose to free agency, but we'll just have to wait and see, and up-and-coming Isaiah Simmons. As I read their roster out to you, it's pretty easy to notice one thing. They have all of the necessary pieces to be title contenders, so I do expect great things from them in the 2021 season. At least a deep playoff run. Well, first let's start off with them making the playoffs. But yeah, a deep playoff run. I expect them to be more successful than they were this season, at least next year. Alright, moving on, let's keep things in the South and talk about the Dallas Cowboys and Dak Prescott, or namely Dak's contract. Oh wow, I just realized there's been a lot of QB news in today's segment. Hopefully y'all don't mind. Anyways, if you don't know anything about the Cowboys franchise and haven't been following them over the last few seasons, I mean, I wouldn't blame you. They weren't exciting to watch at all last year. But let me just update you real fast. So basically, if the Cowboys would want to franchise tag Dak, making him $37 million this year, Jerry Jones would have to franchise tag him before March 9th, or they would have to establish a long-term contract with him. Now, this is what Cowboys fans and most NFL fans expected to happen in this offseason, but now there is some uncertainty with Dak's contract, especially with Russell Wilson coming out and stating that he may want to play for Dallas in the future if it doesn't work out with Seattle. Just a few days ago, Dak had all the leverage over the Cowboys in regard to his contract, because obviously he is a high-market player. He is a top 10 QB in the league. And the Cowboys don't just want to lose him without a replacement, right? Because he just, like I mentioned before, he is just a young star in the league. But now, with Russell Wilson coming out and saying that if things don't work out in Seattle, and the Cowboys are one of his target destinations, the organization now has options. Now they have a bit of leverage over Dak because they can explore their options just a little bit and aren't forced to immediately re-sign him. Anyways, that's all I've got in regard to football this week. Hope you all enjoyed.
And that'll cap it off for today's rewatch segment. We really hope you guys enjoyed, and we will be pumping out much more sports related content. So if you did enjoy this video, make sure to like and subscribe. See ya!